Good morning, everyone. Do you remember when we were clapping at 7 o'clock for healthcare workers? Yay, healthcare workers! And they were putting out TikTok videos. It was like American Idol, but 2020 style. It was weird. But now, back then we're all in this together. Now, call your neighbor or call the police if your neighbors have 6 people over or more. Right? We're all in this together. Snitch line. Oh, you can't do both. You can't do both. Nope, you can't. Here is Justin Trudeau jumping on the conspiracy theory Great Reset button. Right? Nobody's talking about a Great Reset. We're not submitting reports titled The Great Reset. People aren't writing books named The Great Reset. Nope, not at all. Nuh-uh. Yes, they are. Okay, something to ponder. If the masks work, why social distancing? Why 6 feet? I'd love to see, anybody got any tests or trials of social distancing as a way to keep people healthy? I don't think it would pass ethics standards to run for the full course of the test. I think it would be ethically irresponsible for the doctors to complete the test, just like I think it's ethically irresponsible for our leaders to continue pushing this as a way to keep you healthy. It's not healthy. It's not healthy. Anyway, if the masks work, why the torture of being 6 feet apart? If the 6 feet apart works, why do you need to use masks, right? Just stay 6 feet apart, citizen, right? You can see my lovely face, but stay 6 feet apart. If both work, why do we need a lockdown? Yeah, because we had mandatory masks and 6 feet apart, and people were pretty well listening to that until all of the advice just went off the rails and now is completely ridiculous, right? Glory holes and stand on one hand to go into the grocery store. Not really, but glory holes were real, which is odd, right? Like it's very, very strange for the government to intrude in your bedroom in that way, right? Like there was a time where most people were like, keep the government out of your bedroom. I don't care what you do, so long as you do it behind closed doors. And now the government's saying, have you ever cut a hole in a fridge in a fridge box? No? Time for some fun because you can't do it any other way. Piss off the government. If all 3 works, why do we need a mandatory vaccine, right? Like if you don't want to have a vaccine, then why not have the choice of mandatory masks and just, have a t-shirt that says, you could, a t-shirt that says stay 6 feet apart, or just put, a big star or something. You see what I'm getting at? This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It is not normal. We have departed from normal, and we're cruising at 30,000 feet, and normal is getting further and further away by the second. Okay, this is a big problem. Moving into Adamson's barbecue, this wasn't Skelly that was arrested and has this bail condition, but this is really, really concerning. And I'll tell you what I think happened, but even so, here we go. Dr. Kaur, and I've used her tweets before, she says, horrific for Ontario court to set negative COVID test as a bail condition for Skelly or anyone, unethical, unlawful to force people to undertake medical procedures, and a deeply flawed test already challenged in international courts and failed in at least one court, up to 95% false, high PCR count despite no infection, live virus. Adamson's arrestee must take COVID-19 test as bail conditions. Several lawyers say requirement is outrageous, wildly unlawful, significant overreach by authorities, and sets significant and dangerous precedent that everyone should be concerned about. I'm definitely concerned about this. I don't think there's ever a situation where you should be tested for COVID-19, especially with the the known false positives, right? Like the government knows there's false positives. So you have to have a false test in order to get out. No thanks, man. You can't force a medical intervention on me. You can't force a medical test on me. And people will tell me these are emergency times, emergency powers. Yes, they probably can. They've written it into law. Okay, that's fine. You're probably right. They did write it into law, but it's not the government that gives you your inherent God-given rights, right? And maybe they can say, you will do this, or you have to stay here until we give you this test or whatever. But we have laws and rules, and yeah, they might drag their feet on getting the thing to court. They might drag their feet on moving it through the process. But I think that you would get your day in court, right? If you said, no, I'm not doing that, you don't have the constitutional right, regardless of what you say is law. You could take that to the Supreme Court. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that's how things work. And I'd be, assuming that you are arrested and you don't have another choice, I think that you can stand on that. I think that you could say, I have a legal right to refuse a medical anything, test or whatever, on constitutional grounds, on charter grounds. And I think you would be able to push that. Anyway, it's not Adam Skelly. Adamson barbecue arrestee must take COVID test as a bail condition. Several lawyers say requirement is outrageous and likely unlawful. A man arrested after allegedly spitting at police during a fracas outside Adamson barbecue must undergo a COVID-19 test and disclose the result as a condition of his bail. a requirement several lawyers said is unreasonable and likely unlawful. Michael Bielto Arena was arrested on November 26th. So as I was saying, it's not Skelly as far as I can tell, but I'm not subscribed to the Star, so I'm not reading the whole article. This is from the pdmj.org, Mask Risks, and it's a peer-reviewed paper. It was first published in July of 2020. The peer review was completed in November 19th, so that was 11 or so days ago. And it says, it goes through the research, it cites studies, it cites multiple studies. It's a collection of very interesting data that we know, that has been known, and that has driven policy up till now, up till 2020, when the world went upside down and science went out the window for groupthink and right think, and the whole 1984 plan was just accelerated to a point of, well, everybody noticing it because the science changed literally overnight. Like, and when I say we knew this, there are legal decisions that mandatory masking of nurses during flu season is in violation of the charter. So mandatory masking citizens to protect against a virus. Show me the evidence that the virus works, or that the mask prevents the spread of the virus, and not with modeling, because modeling, you can do anything you want, right? Like you can put anything into the model, right? And say, oh, look at this, it prevents it by 84%. If we didn't have these masks, it'd be thousands of people with cases, so many cases you wouldn't believe it. And except that the cases mean absolutely nothing. It's bupkis. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It means that you got a positive test. It doesn't even mean that you're sick, because there's a lot of people who are tested because they have to be tested, right? Because mandatory testing to go to elderly homes, mandatory testing in long-term care homes, mandatory testing to visit family members, mandatory testing for certain employment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is driven by faulty data. They are creating faulty data, and they're shoving it down our throats as real. They're lying, to put it bluntly. Here's the Rebel News reporting on Skelly's Barbecue, day 6. The evening Sunday update. There are at least 7 police vehicles with several officers around. Side entrance is wide open with the lights inside turned on. The question arises, who authorized all of this and why? You have to wonder, like, what are they operating on in legal footing? These people opened their business. They got shut down by the health inspector, the health official, and then opened again, got fined, opened again, got obstruction, has bail conditions. And now, does that allow police to maintain this presence? Is there an ongoing investigation? Did Mr. Skelly, was there a very serious crime committed here? How could they be putting this much resources onto somebody opening their business in defiance of a public health order? And again, we're going to talk about the data in just a minute, because the all-cause mortality data we're lower than the last few years, despite what the PHAC says, according to the CBC article I read, and I'm going to read to you. But that's interesting. This is a huge police presence, and considering the amount of violence in Toronto recently, the shootings are daily. Like, there was 5 people shot yesterday, and it barely makes news. I used to keep track of it and say, this is shameful. This is shameful. I can't believe this is your city. I can't believe that anybody would raise their family there. I would be terrified if I had my children in Toronto right now. And maybe I'm oversensitive, because I remember a time when I grew up in Toronto. I went and visited my grandmother weekly in Toronto, and we'd go play with my cousins. We'd go walk down the street. There wasn't any real concern from my parents or myself, my cousins, anybody. And that's not true anymore. And look at how violent the city has become. Look at how these thug-like police are trying to intimidate this business from opening. How big of an investigation do you need? They opened in defiance of Doug Ford in order to test a law. Is this something to absolutely destroy this guy's business over? It's very, very concerning. Here's another concerning thing, Manitoba. I'm at the Church of God this morning, 15 minutes out of Steinbeck, which is holding a drive-in church service in defiance of public health orders. There's already a police presence. I was warned by an officer that should I walk any closer, I'd be at risk of a $1,200 fine. Most are staying in their cars, but some have told the media they plan to visit the service in person and fight the fine in court. A pastor over the intercom warns of exaggerated rumors of impending doom. Police are redirecting traffic over the 100 cars parked. Someone's been stopped by police for in their phone while driving. Police are being confronted. Several tickets are being handed out. A police vehicle is blocking off the entrance to the church. A vehicle that refuses to move appears to have nearly been towed, but the tow truck has since moved. The service is over. People are dispersing. Most people remained in their vehicles to the point where traffic was blocked off on the highway. I'm off to defrost now, I guess is where he's going. And here's Randy Hillier weighing in. He says the state has gone too far using police to prevent peaceful assembly, prayer, and worship. These intolerant acts continue to escalate as the risk and threat of COVID diminishes. What will our society look like when we are completely safe? And the RCMP prevent church from holding Sunday service, so Christians brave the cold to worship on the highway. And this is the post-millennial reporting, which is what Mr. Hillier was responding to. Here's the pastor, Mr. Henry Hildebrandt, and he says, RCMP moving in to blockade our church in Steinbeck, Manitoba right now. Here's another one. Langley Church fined $2,300 for violating BC's COVID-19 gathering restrictions. Can anybody find, I looked and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find anything. Can anybody find me a mosque that was shut down for having gathering restrictions or anything to that effect over Ramadan? Like, this has all happened in the recent past, has it not? Nobody mentioned anything about anything. Didn't they? What's going on here? I know what's going on here. But I thought, maybe there might be something out there that I missed. So if anybody could find a mosque or another religious ceremony, another religious worship that's been shut down and fined, that would be wonderful. And if you have any other church ones, please let me know. I feel like this is not going to stand. But who knows? Maybe an activist judge gets the case and they say public health is more important than Christianity, and they'll be that specific because it's not religion that's under attack here. Here's another one. Chapters, and I tweeted out to City of Guelph and to Cam Guthrie. I have questions. Why are we allowing Indigo and Costco? And I had a dream last night there was another one, but I can't remember which one. Probably a mall or something like that. But they're not allowing people without masks to come in, but there are medical exemptions that supersede it. And the medical exemptions, I've shown you before, are written on the Section 22 order. The exemptions are very, very clear, stated in the order as cited by the Ontario Human Rights Code. I'll bring it up. Hold on. Let's just get this up here. Here it is. This is the Section 22 order from Guelph, from my area here. The obligation to provide a reasonable accommodation under the Ontario Human Rights Code requires exemption from this requirement. I think that's pretty clear. That's written into the Section 22 order. And yet, here's a woman who is trying to get into Chapters, and this guy is Doug Ford in disguise, I think. If you look at his eyes, look at him. He looks just like Doug Ford. Here's the
Store man, you can't come into the store.
Why?
It's against policy.
What is against
without a mask,
policy?
You can't come into the store.
I can't come into the store without a mask.
Step away from the store,
I have
please.
a medical exemption.
You can order online.
It goes
we have
against my
pickup,
it
everything.
goes. I don't have a credit card, and it goes against my conscience, my creed, and my spiritual
I get you to step away from the door, please.
Thank you.
These are our rights disappearing right in front of our eyes. A retail store, a big conglomerate, multinational company, is superseding the Ontario Human Rights Code because they decide that they don't want people without masks on in their facility. But that's not their call to make. They have to have an exemption from this requirement. Human Rights Code requires it. Why? And this is what I asked in my tweet to the City of Guelph and to Cam Guthrie, the Mayor of Guelph. Why are you allowing retailers to supersede the Ontario Human Rights Code and create policies that are in contravention of it, in violation of it? Why? Why no action? Because, we've got a whole bunch of police officers who are willing to come and make an example out of Manitoba and BC churches. We've got a bunch of police officers who are willing to go inside of a barbecue that has dared to stand up to Doug Ford. And yet, there's absolutely no action to stand up for Canadians' individual charter rights, individual human rights. In violation of the Ontario Human Rights Code, nobody wants to do a darn thing to stand up for the citizens of this country. Are you kidding me? We're such a post-national state. Papers, please, right? This is where we're at, Canada. This is where we're at. This guy is asking, getting checked by Burnaby RCMP if you're from the same household feels like a criminal for dining out. They are criminalizing your behavior. You are not a criminal. What is happening, though, is the longer you comply, they will make it so that what you are doing is criminal. Not using a glory hole? Why not? That was the public health recommendation. You are breaking the law. Why aren't you wearing your mask during sex? You could spread COVID-19. This is an emergency, and your rights have no place here. We're trying to save people's lives. This is where we're at, Canada. I'm not joking. I wish I was. Here's a couple of more human stories, because this is the impact of what we're doing. We're doing this to ourselves. We're sawing off our leg despite the pain and agony, despite the fact that we're saying, please God, stop. Doesn't matter. We're continuing to do this. Goodbye rights, goodbye freedoms. What you have lost is very difficult to regain and is not easily given back. Mark my words. And I hope that I'm wrong. I very much hope that I'm wrong. Kyra Bird says, this is a thread I know I'm going to get heat for. I've weighed the pros and cons. I've weighed the pros, I've weighed the cons. I'm prepared for whatever backlash this will surely ensue. Things in Manitoba are not okay. I'm not going to pussyfoot around the facts and sugarcoat things. What is happening in this province isn't something I'm okay with. In fact, I'm beyond done with this. My final and last straw came on Friday when I went shopping for essential items. I was not Black Friday shopping. Let's make that clear right quick. I went into Cabela's to grab 2 swaddling blankets and 2 sweaters for my children, one being 5 weeks old, the other being 1 year old. The only thing I could buy in store was a sweater for my baby. I had to purchase the exact same sweater in 3T and the 2 swaddling blankets online for the curbside pickup because they were considered non-essential. In what world is it okay to deny parents access to clothe their children? Every day the province of Manitoba apprehends children from the care of their parents who are unable to clothe their children, but now they are taking away the ability for parents to do just that. Sorry, I've got to load this here. Now only the parents with credit cards and the cash to spend on shipping can clothe their children. How is this acceptable? How are we as Manitobans just simply standing by and letting this happen? As for the swaddling blankets, my 5-week-old needs those to sleep. He will not sleep unless he's swaddled. These baby items are essential for myself and many other parents, but now we're being denied access to that as well. At some point, we need to step back and assess what's going on. This isn't about protecting Manitobans because people are still going out shopping, getting what they need, and or getting their non-essential items through curbside or in-store pickup. Using those methods of shopping sees people congregating in lines for 30 or 40 minutes waiting to get their items when instead they could run in, grab what they need while maintaining social distancing and be out of the store in less than 10 minutes. These restrictions are harming small businesses, they're harming Manitobans, and more specifically, they're harming low-income parents either straddling the poverty line or already living in poverty. We all had a part to play in these numbers getting as bad as they did, but our federal government and provincial governments have has a responsibility, to protect us, and they failed miserably. But taking away our rights isn't the way to rectify the mistakes made. I agree with a lot of this. I don't think that we have a part to play in these numbers getting as bad as they are. Look at the amount of testing. They changed the definition of a positive test. There's all sorts of reasons to think that this is absolutely not our fault. This is going to happen because it's flu season and the flu is eradicated. But you know what's not? The thing that makes us locked down. That's not. And the politicians are lying liars. Lying liars. Here's Ryan O'Connor. He says, a thread on the peace officer overreach during the pandemic. I had long-standing plans for takeout from Adamson's Barbecue North Toronto location yesterday before the restaurant became a lockdown flashpoint. Canada's best barbecue regardless of the politics and antics of its owner. I queued about 10 minutes before it opened at 11 a.m. Only one party at a time was permitted inside to order takeout for social distancing reasons. I was second in line. At exactly 11, 2 police cruisers and several bylaw officers showed up, about 8 peace officers in total. Bylaw officers asked those in the queue if they were customers. The police advised that they were there for an inspection and they went inside. They asked if the owner was around. He wasn't. This would be in breach of his bail conditions. There is no prohibited indoor dining at this location. This setup is a takeout counter where one orders and pays. Everyone inside, customers and workers, was masked. One bylaw officer cross-examined the manager about procedural rules having nothing to do with the public health. He then falsely claimed that indoor takeout was banned and customers could not come inside to order food, that only the curbside pickup and delivery was allowed. Apparently earlier that week, another bylaw officer attended and correctly at law said the indoor takeout operating was permitted, but the next bylaw officer referred to that as his interpretation and that he had his own. Sorry, just loading. The bylaw officer appears to have misread the lockdown regulation, which clearly permits takeout, i.e. going to a restaurant, ordering, paying, and leaving with the food. Nothing mandates curbside pickup for restaurants. The bylaw officer clearly confuses the restaurant rules with the rules for non-big box or non-discount, non-food retail, which requires curbside pickup or delivery. There are two ways to read this, both of which are bad. The bylaw officer is simply ignoring the law, or B, he is being directed or decided to give the small business a hard time because its owner's conduct earlier in the week. It's always necessary that those responsible for enforcing the law act legally and accurately enforce the law and not its misinterpretation. This is especially so when our emergency laws can change weekly and officers are empowered to levy fines and shut down businesses. It's also hard to believe that this isn't a targeted enforcement. The city admitted as much earlier this week, reporting that Mayor John Tory was dissatisfied with the initial officer response to indoor dining at the other Adamson location. The city then threw the book at the small business and has at least 2 times inspected another location which is operated legally, which was then told illegally that its operation wasn't compliant with the law. At least partly to satisfy the mayor's fragile ego when his rules weren't followed, a legally operating small business feeding the public is told to modify its legal services or face legal consequences. This is not an endorsement of the owner's conduct this week, but this is yet another example of Toronto peace officers' pandemic overkill, enforcing laws that either don't understand or don't care to. It's illegal and unconstitutional and exposes the city to legal liability. The city's wrongful application of its laws can cause other businesses to modify their services, affecting fragile business bottom lines and employee hours. This from a city that claims to support small businesses while it overregulates them in practice. Yeah, there are serious consequences to the ridiculous garbage that we're trying to do, and they may be the consequences that the people making the rules over encumbering these businesses with regulations, they may be the consequences they're aiming for, namely the destruction of the small businesses. Why would they do that? I don't know, right? Because they need to implode the economy? I don't know. Why are they spending so much overseas? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. The spending that the government is doing, the fact that we don't have a budget, the fact that the budget that's going to be released today is going to be after the close. Right? Do you remember the budget day with the new shoes? And like, it was usually a big deal, pageantry, and we're on track and we're going to be okay and blah, 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 blah. And doing a budget after the markets close today doesn't signal lots of confidence. Anyway, here's Dan Kelly, again, the small business. He's the CFIB president and CEO of Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. He says, small businesses get that there's a pandemic and are on board to understand and implement reasonable restrictions. Most have spent what little income they have to do just that. But the CFIB is getting hundreds of calls from small merchants dumbfounded by the new rules, unsure on which measures to apply to whom. Most importantly, they're asking how the rules actually accomplish their stated objective. They deserve answers. Everybody deserves answers. Everybody's saying, prove it. Give us the data. Why are you shutting us down? Give us the data of why, and maybe we'll comply. But basically, they can't. Here's an interesting article, and this one is brutal. It's bad because, well, it draws you in because they say we can't police our way out of a pandemic. And I mean, this gives you an indication of exactly where we're at with this magazine or this publication. But anyway, they use that title to draw people in, and they at the end of it, basically, I'm not going to read any of it because they betray themselves at the end here. Because at the end, they use their we can't police our way out of a pandemic to push for communism, right? Instead of more policing, fines, and jail time, we need testing, education, and support. We need a basic minimum income and immediate release of empty buildings to house those without housing. That's going to solve what? Policing will not end the transmission of a disease. It will exacerbate its spread. We can't police our way out of a pandemic. So this is a pretty garbage article, but I just wanted to show you how they're using how they use articles that sound kind of reasonable to backdoor conclusions like that, which are just completely unreasonable and have no basis in reality, right? You know what we need to fix the pandemic? Communism. No, you are wrong. Here's another one. Opiate deaths skyrocket. Mental health suffers due to pandemic restrictions. New federal report says. This whole article is a way to turn what you would think is like if you were discussing the pandemic and its impact on society, you would talk about unemployment, you would talk about demoralization, you would talk about how people aren't really feeling, good about things, blah blah blah, all sorts of stuff. This article delves into 80% of people who get this. They say 80% are in long-term care, but I'll show you that in a minute. But 80% of people who get this are of are visible minorities. And I thought that was very interesting. And they cite the stress of racism as a reason, as a contributing factor for the people getting COVID-19 more. So the stress of racism is contributing to high rates in minority populations. What? Like, what kind of... So, like, instead of addressing what would be the majority of people who are being affected by this through unemployment, through having trouble following the ever-changing health rules, by all of the stuff that would be impacting a vast majority of people, they're focusing on a very small percentage of people who they're then trying to explain why, and they don't have an idea. They're just saying it's probably racism. They don't know why. Like, they're not doing the research. They're just trying to further their narrative, okay? This is it. 70% of Canadians who responded to a recent Stats Canada survey said they were concerned about mandating social ties, while 54% of respondents with kids said they were very or extremely concerned about their children's loneliness or social isolation. While thousands of Canadians have died of COVID-19, nearly 80% of them in long-term care homes as of August, there were also more deaths in general this year than last. That's not true. I've mapped this out. Like, here's the all-cause death in Ontario, right? And this is the green. And now they've got January and they've got to September now. So I'll redo this. I'll update it. But the all-cause mortality is low. And here's the source for that data. And again, they've got January again, which is good. Before they only had February, and they've got to September now. So they've got the month of August and September. But you can see, like, in September, this is Newfoundland, just off the first one, from 2017, 350, and then we'll see what 2020 is like. 380. So, okay. Oh, September. Did I say September? 350? Yeah, 350, 370 for the month of September. So, very interesting. And they had 0 deaths from which causes? That's interesting to note too. In September 2020, they had 0 deaths from cancer. There's 0 deaths from cancer in August and September. Isn't that weird? That seems strange. 0 deaths from, right? When in all other years there were deaths, right? Very, very strange. What's going on there? No deaths from cancer, no deaths. Anyway, so the news is just telling you things that are not true. Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec all showed increased numbers of deaths compared to the same time period over the last 5 years. That's wrong. Some of these additional deaths are directly related to COVID-19. What happened to cancer deaths? However, contributions from other causes not directly linked to COVID-19 cannot be excluded. PHAC concluded. Very, very strange. Very, very strange, right? When that's just not true. The other thing is the CTV news clip. Remember that I did a whole little video on the fact that it was actually like 98% of people, according to that CTV news clip. And even in this, they say 80% of people have been in long-term care, whereas in Ontario, they're saying 65% if you look at the numbers from Ontario.ca. So I don't know what to think, but I think that it's really, really strange that CTV didn't print a retraction, didn't say we got this wrong and here's the real numbers. They just clipped the original clip. So when you go back, it's just gone, just disappeared. Poof, gone, right? Disappeared. No need to think about that, dear citizen. Why even mention it again? We're not going to bring that back into the news and say we got it wrong or right. We're just going to clip it and not mention it and hope you don't ask us a question. And if you do ask us a question, we're just going to ignore you because that's what we can do. This is interesting. BC's Ministry of Health says disclosing the number of COVID-19 cases in cities over a 14-day period would threaten public safety. That's why on the S19 at the top of all the black means the S22 means they say it would also be an unreasonable invasion of privacy. So that's why it's blacked out there, right? And yes, I'm peeling this. This is frankly not going to get any real information because those 14-day case rates are for August, a month that is many, many months ago. But it's the principle of the thing, darn it. Maybe an appeal would get them to change policy, but also the OIPC is so overloaded that if they stick to their guns, an actual ruling would take more than a year. Welcome to Canadian freedom of information hell, folks. Yay! Here's an update. Several hundred people gather in Calgary in protest of the province's COVID-19 rules. This is from the 28th, so this is Saturday, but I just came across it yesterday, so I wanted to show you. I told you yesterday that we bought freezers. We ordered freezers. The freezers are going to be delayed. Can the Liberals do anything right? No, and it can't be a mistake at this point. They're not that incompetent. They're very incompetent. They're very incompetent. So I mean, could it be a mistake? I don't know. But the problem here is they're going to use the fact that there's no vaccine to continue these lockdowns, despite the fact that lockdowns don't do anything. There's no plan for after the lockdown. They just want to keep those COVID numbers low because the only thing they're looking at is cases. They're not looking at hospitalizations. They're not looking at ICU numbers. They're not looking at anything like that. They're not even looking at our capacity, really. They're telling us that 150 beds in a population of 15 million-ish, 14 point whatever million, with about 400 hospitals, 150 people in critical care. That's it. We can't do surgeries in Ontario anymore if you've got 150 people in critical care. We're done. We don't have any capacity. We couldn't possibly look after anybody else. Shut it all down. Lockdown. That's where we're at. So, I mean, incompetence writ large, right? Like just absolutely unbelievable, right? Buying the freezers, expect delays, getting special freezers for COVID-19 vaccine to keep them at minus 81, right? Yeah. Questions abound. And this government doesn't seem to care. And at all levels, they don't seem to care. They're just continuing to push forward as fast as possible with this agenda. And from the municipal, like, can you imagine if stores, if Adamson Barbecue started violating the Ontario Human Rights Code, like, the city would probably respond and be like, you can't do this. You can't do this. You're not allowed to do X, Y, Z, whatever you're doing, right? Like, but Costco and Chapters can. I don't know. Okay, so I said earlier that they're not giving us a budget. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland is set to deliver the fall economic statement in the House of Commons this afternoon after markets close. It's in the tweet. Like, don't expect anything good. It's all bad. $400 billion with a B, dollar deficit and $1 trillion debt. And the outlook, spend. Turn on the taps because we could afford it because reasons. Because I think they just want to bankrupt us. Look at us compared to all of the other G7 countries. We've spent way more, had a hugely worse result, and yet the media tells us that Trudeau's doing just fine. Everybody loves him. Everybody loves him. And if you look at the polls, a large, I think like 56 or 57% of people would vote for a left-wing party like Liberal, Green, NDP. 17% for the NDP. I think it was 36 for the Liberals and 7 for the Greens. So whatever that is. There's no, where's the hope? Where's the hope? Right? And I mean, I don't trust polls, but holy smokes. How could you look at what's happening and be like, this seems reasonable? Those churches are really doing a disservice to everyone. Okay, the last thing I've said, I think this is part of the plan. And so when other people start saying the things that I've been saying, and yeah, like I'm reading the stuff that's happening. Of course, I think everybody's paying attention with what's going on. I think that it's interesting how hollow Biden's win feels. I don't think anybody really believes that he won. Like everybody's looking and saying, "Oh yes, definitely, President-elect, office of the President-elect Biden," but it's not genuine. It's not. The excitement isn't there. You know what I mean? Like if he had a really big win, an 80 million vote win, and he won. 80 million votes, right? If he won like that, you'd think there'd be some excitement. And I just haven't seen any excitement. Everybody just seems to be holding their breath, right? The markets are kind of carrying on. Everything's kind of, even Trump, he's yelling and doing his Twitter thing. He's saying we won big. He's doubling down on his position, taking it to the Supreme Court. And I've said to people, nothing's really meaningfully changed. The lower courts are going to throw these out until it gets to the Supreme Court. And then when it gets to the Supreme Court, it'll be decided. But if there are people who are saying that it might not even get to the Supreme Court. But what I was saying is, when I see other people saying kind of what my crazy theory, or one of my crazy theories, because you throw lots up against the wall, right? Who knows? Then I feel like that's independent verification, right? Like I didn't talk to him and tell him my theory, right? And I mean, I don't know, but very interesting that other people come to the same conclusion looking at similar data on the internet that, yeah, maybe this was the plan all along. Maybe it would be insane to think that Trump didn't think that they were going to try and steal this election by any means necessary. It would be insane to think that he didn't then take himself out of the equation, like he's going to run for president. But if it's not against, I mean, it may be against Trump that they're stealing the election against him as the other opponent, but the real crime is not against Trump. It's against the American people who believe that they're participating in democracy when they're not, right? Like that's a much bigger crime than stealing the presidency from Trump. The crime against the people is the bigger crime. So once people are made to understand that, and that Trump acted to protect the system, I guess, it's outside of him. It's much bigger than him. It's much bigger than him. And he just let them do it. He didn't entice them to do it. He may have goaded them to do it. And he may have put them into positions of power to follow through with a plan to run a coup on the United States, on a sitting United States president, through election fraud. Like, that's a coup. That's a big deal, I think, from everything that I've read in my previous reading about taking down U.S. elections and such. If you get caught, it's a big deal. If you don't get caught, you've got the U.S. presidency and a whole lot of power, right? But if you do get caught, that's a big deal. So if you're interested in what I think is happening, this guy goes through quite a lot of. As I was reading this, I thought, yep. So check that out. I'm not going to read it out because, I mean, you guys can. I think it's more fun that way. It'll last a little longer. And I stay tuned. I think that we're still going to see a Trump inauguration on January 20th, and I think that we're about to see more fireworks this week. I think that I think the deadline is like Tuesday to certify the ballots or something to that effect in a couple of the states. I think Wisconsin's on the verge of going for Trump, although they said that their ballots were certified and confirmed the Biden win. I saw a tweet to that effect this morning, but I saw all other people saying that Wisconsin was about to flip. So I don't know what to believe on that one, but. Yeah, it's very interesting what's happening, and I think we're right at the part. I think we're at the part where the important part of the magic trick, right? Like the reveal, right? Maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but this stuff is making its way through the courts. I think we're going to know one way or the other by January 20th, right? So that's going to be fun. That's going to be interesting to know. Anyway, that's enough out of me today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful